Hello, 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 welcome back. It's design day. We are making stuff, or should I say we are redesigning and fixing stuff today. And we've been working our way through the backgrounds for Dungeons and Dragons, the modern version. And we're going to continue that process until we have, I think, got a good collection of the sort of standard stuff that people would want. I'm going to put up a poll. Feel free to take part in that poll if you want to. I suggest grabbing some food, some drink, making sure you are comfortable, and then we'll go from there. Okay, this is going to take me a little while. I'm going to be working through at least 3 backgrounds today, so it's not going to take a short period of time. We're going to do a lot of work, and I'm going to discuss a lot of stuff, and we've got some interesting choices to make. Anyway, let's get started, shall we? Hi, welcome to How to D&D. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, the most modern version of 5e, whether that's 2014 or 2024, and we're looking at redesigning some backgrounds. And the backgrounds that I want to look at is the Gambler, the Sage, and the Soldier. And there may be a 4th one. We'll see how we go. We'll see how time works for us. Those are the ones that I want to focus on today and sort of address some of the problems that might occur when you're dealing with those particular backgrounds. So I'm going to work my way through the Gambler first, and then I'm going to go over to the Sage and the Soldier, because the Sage and the Soldier will be quite quick. I don't think they're going to take a lot of time. I think that'll be very easy for us to address. And so we're doing this, the scribe. Now, yes, there's problems. There's significant problems to discuss about the scribe as a background, and there's also very, very significant problems with the soldier as a background. But we'll get to them. What I want to do is first address the Gambler, because I feel like the Gambler, if there's a background that people want as playing a character, is usually they want to be a gambler. A gambler or a drunk seems to be a very common one in my group anyway. So, hashtag, how would you redesign the Gambler background for Dungeons and Dragons 5e? 2024. So I'm going to put that in as a question. Redesign. Make sure I get the word correct. Yes, there we go. Redesign. So that is my question. Hello, Fred Huber. Fred Huber is a patron. Thanks for being here, buddy. I would also view making backgrounds much more reduced in terms of the clutter and what they're doing in 5e. But the problem is that 5e, whether that's 2014 or 2024, is kind of the equivalent of advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So it's got a lot more rules. There's a lot more going on. There's a lot more sort of nuance going on here. There's a lot more things. Whereas I see other versions of D&D that, such as Shadow Dark, like Shadow Dark and 5e Nimble. Was it Nimble 5e? And there's a couple of others as well out there. I view them more as sort of modern versions of Dungeons and Dragons that are the basic game. So back in the day, there used to be the basic game, and then there was the advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and they ran at the same time. So you had 2 different game systems. For me, I think I can't turn backgrounds for Dungeons and Dragons 5e. I can't make them like basic D&D. I don't think that is the marketplace for them. Is there a marketplace for making more backgrounds for Shadow Dark or for Nimble 5e or some other system? Absolutely. And we'll pursue that, but not today. Today we're dealing with the modern version of D&D and the backgrounds there, because there are some significant things to address. So, just so that people are clear about where my head is at with all of this. So, let's go over to my document. I've asked the question, and now I need to start showing you what I've been up to. This will also go onto Patreon, the paid tier for those of you who are interested. It is the 11th of December here in New Zealand. 11th of December. December 2005. Okay, so one of the things we're going to do with the new modern backgrounds is we're going to pull out the ability score increase and make it an optional rule and give it far more flexibility if you're going to use it at all. So it's not tied, so ability score increases, as I've said before, won't be connected to background, species, or class. It is optional, it is outside of all of that, so that it's not an optimization thing. Also, the starting feat, an optional rule, pulled out, I'm pulling them out of the background, not attaching them to species or to the class, okay? Classes are already stuffed enough with a lot of different abilities and features as it is. We don't need to stick any more in there. It is an optional thing if you decide you need to do it. Frankly, you will need to adjust the entire thing. I think you're honestly going to find you have to adjust your entire game if you include starting feats. But the ability score increase, it may not be too much of a big deal. I mean, you know, make the game a little bit harder. So we've got the custom process, so we're going to build it this way. The background class, background characteristics, our skill proficiencies, our tool proficiency. I want to include languages in the background, not in the species or class. Background feature, we're going to make sure we have a mechanical process that makes it clear how that will actually work, and our equipment. Okay, so that is all going to be going into that sort of order. So let's go down to the first one, which is the gambler. Now the gambler is not in the player's handbook, whether it's the older one or the new one. Like it's not in 2014, it's not in 2024. So how do we deal with that? Well, if I just scroll past all the things that I've been prepping and planning, this is our gambler. And the gambler is actually an Acquisitions Incorporated. I've got the page, I've got the information in front of me, and we're going to go through and try to build it in such a way that it will work for your modern game of D&D. Building on all the things that we think will work best for it. So that is the plan. So we're going to take the gambler, and because the gambler is, let's try it again. I'm going to cut, and we're going to just take that, pop that up here at the top so I can see where it is. So can you. Okay, there we go. That's where we want it to be. Paste. There we go. All right, so now we're in business. We're looking good. So gambler, very standard characteristics, background characteristics, personality trait, a flaw for your character, a goal for your character, and a relationship of some kind. These are all based off the old concept of the characteristics for backgrounds from 2024, kind of been removed from the new version of Dungeons and Dragons in 2024. 2014 had them, 2024 has removed them. I've included them back because I know my players got very upset when they disappeared. What I haven't done is provided you with tables. I'm assuming you can figure out how to make that stuff up yourself. Like it's not something we need to actually spell out for you. We're just saying those are the 4 things. Okay, they will help guide how you play your character. And of course you might change them, who knows. So let's have a look at our skills. I put down select 2 from the following because I think there's room for a gambler to have a range of different skill proficiencies. That they may not be just you get these 2 and that is it. I put down deception, and I put down performance, and I put down persuasion. Now if you look at Acquisitions Incorporated, the gambler had proficiency skills in insight, and if you know anything about me, you'll know that I think that insight is a mistake. We're going to come back to this. The other thing is they've put down here one game set tool proficiency. I have no issues with that. I think it makes perfect sense. It's just about what is it going to be, right? I put down dice, cards. We'll fill in the rest of that in a second. I don't think the tool proficiency section is a problem. I think it's fine the way it was. Languages I've included. Now, the old one said you get one language of your choice. I'm going to go with you gain common and one language of your choice. So you're getting 2 languages because I'm taking all the languages out of the species option and I'm putting into the background where I think it really belongs. And then the gambler feature, you have advantage on skill checks related to 1 game set proficiency you gain from this background. So that is very sort of standard how I've been building a lot of these. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm probably going to do something that you are going to find a little surprising as a gambler. I am probably going to do something you'll find rather odd today. So what you see written here, this is probably not going to stay the same. I don't think it's an issue that there'd be get 1 game set, but I'm thinking, actually, can we go any further? Because it is a game set in gambling. It is not something that is going to come up that often. And I find that, if you're a gambler, you probably have a couple of different skills. Maybe you're really good at cards, but generally, maybe you're actually quite good at doing a lot of different things. Gamblers tend to have stuff. If you're a professional gambler, you may well be quite capable at a lot of different things. So we're going to come back to this. And then, of course, we've got gear. Now, there is some gear that is highlighted as being like, you have. I've put down cards, dice. In the gambler on part of the acquisitions incorporated, it just said 1 game set. I'm going to give them probably all of the game sets. Dice, cards, dragon, ante, or whatever the heck it is. I can't remember. Dragon chess or whatever. A set of fine clothes. I think that is a good idea. A belt, a pouch. Don't know about the belt. I'm not sure about the signet ring. We could do that potentially, but these are, we've got basically the gist. It says also a lucky charm. And I'm not against the idea of a lucky charm. I honestly think that a lucky charm would be quite good. I think gamblers are superstitious. Lucky charm. And we'll just write down lucky charm. Okay. So we're going to come back to this. We're going to have to do a bit of work on that. All right. So that is the basic gist. We also need to make sure we have sort of like a rundown of what is a gambler. So we haven't actually got that yet. So we need to have a line that sort of explains what a gambler is. So let's go gambler. Define. Okay, a person who gambles. Okay. What does it mean to be a gambler? Okay. Okay. So this is a little bit more detailed. So let's take this, put this in, because we need to make sure we have our narrative figured out. And it's not a person, it'll be an individual. An individual who takes a lot of high-risk chances, often with games waging money. Something like that. Okay, there's our bits and pieces. I want to go through all the skills to make sure we have selected all the skills that seem appropriate for something like a gambler. I've been doing this quite a lot for those of you who are unaware, just to make sure that we are not leaving out things that would probably be good for them to have as a thing, like something that they would use. And so you have a bit of choice around that. So athletic, no. Gamblers and athletics is probably not going to be a thing. Acrobatics, sleight of hand. I can see there being room for sleight of hand. Why? because of the opportunity to cheat. So we're going to include sleight of hand. I think that seems reasonable, because sleight of hand, as defined by 5e, is really about doing things that involve being very, very dodgy, right? Sleight of hand is things regarding trickery, manual trickery, larceny, concealing objects, or concealing cards would be a good one. Concealing dice, swapping out dice. There's going to be a lot of sleight of hand going on. So I think sleight of hand is probably appropriate to be an option. Stealth is a little too broad in its nature, because now stealth is more around sneaking around, whereas I don't think you're going to be doing it if you are a gambler, slipping away. Sleight of hand is probably more appropriate. Arcana, no. History, no. Investigation, probably not necessarily involved here. Investigation, I feel like, is kind of too tailored to another aspect of your gameplay, whereas you're sort of investigating a location. And I don't think that's quite right. Nature and religion, I don't think appropriate. Animal handling, obviously not. Now, insight originally was insight, but I don't like insight as a skill, and so I'm going to leave that out, as if it doesn't exist. I've always considered insight to be robbing players of their own ability to figure shit out, and it's not a skill that I particularly like. So I'm just going to leave it alone, like it doesn't exist. Medicine, now you could include it yourself if you want to change things up. That's all right. Perception is the super skill. Would perception be suitable for a gambler? It would be, like many other backgrounds, it would be very good, but it's too good, so we're going to leave that alone. Again, like insight, perception, I think those are things we need to leave alone. Survival, and also I don't think perception is quite as important as some of the other things, like persuasion, deception, performance, and sleight of hand. I think those are much more important. Survival, no. Deception, yes. Intimidation. There is the possibility that intimidation might be something you would like to include. I can see there being the opportunity to intimidate somebody if you are a gambler, depending on the type of gambler that you are. So I'm going to go intimidate. Intimidation. So I've actually given you the opportunity to pick up either deception, intimidation, performance, persuasion, or sleight of hand. So there's a lot more. And I think that's far more appropriate for a gambler. The problem with the gambler is so close to being like a criminal and the charlatan backgrounds that we've already made, that we've got to be careful how we do this. Okay, here's the next thing that I want to do. We deal with the tool proficiency. And this tool proficiency will bleed over into the gambler's feature. Okay? We need to lock this down. And I'm going to do something that I think a few of you will probably be kind of shocked by. I can see there being an argument for, as a gambler, you probably only have one type of game set that you're really good at. That's quite possible. But my experience with people who are professional gamblers is they often have more than one. They might be better at one thing in particular, but they're not. Those tend to be not professional gamblers. Professional gamblers tend to pick up multiple skills. They will gamble across many different things, not just one area. They might be better at one thing in particular, but they are often multi-skilled in terms of what they're focusing on. So we're going to do something, and because I don't think that having a tool proficiency in one game set is probably going to be enough, I'm going to be very generous to the gambler. You might say too generous. That might well be the case, but this is how I'm going to do it. at least for now, until of course it gets play tested and my players show me and indicate that I made a terrible mistake, which might happen. So there is dragon chess set, there's a playing card set, and 3 dragon ante set, and then we've got dice. So there are 4 different game sets. Tool proficiency in all game sets. I know what you're thinking. Are you crazy? You wouldn't do that for another background. Why are you doing it for this? It's because it's a game set and it's around gambling. That's really the only reason for me to be doing it, is that reason. Playing cards, dice, dragon chess, and then playing cards, and then we've got here and 3 dragon ante. I've had plenty of time to think about this as to whether this would be a terrible idea or not, and it's just, I worked at Odyssey House, which is drug and alcohol, gambling, criminal behavior, and my experience with people who were professional gamblers is they gambled on everything. They had multiple skills. So it wasn't just one game. Like, it wasn't just chess. They didn't just bet on chess. They played cards. They played dice. They played anything they could get their hands on. And so they've kind of shaped the way I see gambling as a profession. Now, you might say, well, just because you were a gambler before you became an adventurer doesn't mean that you were a professional gambler. That's true, but I think we're kind of leaning into the idea that this is their profession before they became that superhero, hero, adventurer. This was their profession. And if that was your profession, you probably have multiple game sets that you'll become capable with. So we're going to give them the whole lot. So you have advantage on checks related to all game sets. Sets you gain from this background. Because sometimes as a dungeon master, you'll set up a situation where there's gambling involved, but the gambling will be around dice or playing cards. It's very specific. So you're kind of playing it's kind of like a shot in the dark, that you'll have the specific skill in the area that you need to be able to be good at gambling in this area. So I'm not going to do that to our players. I'm going to give them the widest berth for this, so that dungeon masters don't need to say, there's gambling tables and there's dice games, there's card games, there's dragon chess, and there's 3 dragon ante, so you're not going to miss out. To alleviate that problem, if you want to narrow it down as a dungeon master, I'm going to make it easy so you can make it narrow, but for the person playing the gambler, that is not an issue because they are good at all of those things. And this is really just to create synergy between what the dungeon master would like to put into their game and their world, and the synergy of the player being able to interact in that world in a meaningful way since they are a gambler. And I know that this would come up in my home group because it has come up before, and we've always had discussions around it, and it's always wound up being an issue. So I think this is the best way to go. So next, so cards, dice, dragon chess, let's give them all of these. They're not very expensive, so we might as well. 3 dragon ante. Okay. And I think that is fine. 3 dragon ante. We'll need to count up all of that to make sure we know how much that all comes to. So I can do that now. So the cards come to 5 silver, which is like almost nothing. So it's not what a big deal that is. Dice, that's 5 silver. We got 1 silver piece for that. The dragon chess is 1 gold piece. Like that's like dragon chess. You ready? And then 3 dragon ante. All of these are quite light too, so they're not going to take up a lot of space. 3 dragon ante. Okay, so we've got all that. And then fine clothes. Okay, so let's have a look at what fine clothes might be like. I don't believe there is any other tool proficiencies that would be appropriate for a gambler. Looking at all the things, those are the ones that seem to be the most sensible for the gambler. So let's have a look at fine clothes. Clothing, fine clothes, 15. Fine clothes is 15. GP. And then a lucky charm. Let's just say we're going to give it them. They get it. It's free. Don't worry about the cost. Not an issue. The signet ring. Why the signet ring? I'm inclined to include the signet ring just because it is sort of it's jewelry, and I find that people tend to have something on them that they can use as a backup for continuing the bet. And the signet ring would be worth a little bit. Won't be a lot, but 5 gold pieces. So we're going to go with that. 5 gold pieces. GP. Okay, so now let's have a look at the gear and see if we are missing anything. Abacus, acid, alchemist, no. Ammunition, antitoxin, none of those. Backpack, probably not. We could give them, I don't know, no, let's leave the backpack for now. Ball bearings, barrel. Do you know, I'd be inclined, because I feel like gamblers need to run. They need an escape route. And something like ball bearings, I almost feel like there's got to be something that they have that they can sort of distract. I'm going to give them ball bearings. It's only 1 GP. And I would like to give them caltrops as well. Barrel, basket, bedroll, bell, no. Blanket, block, book, buckets, glass bottle, caltrops. And caltrops. That is only 1 GP. Great for making somebody fall over or for slowing people down as they stand on the sharp things. Candle, no. Chain, chalk, no. Chest, climber's kit, no. We've got clothing. I don't think a crowbar is appropriate for them, so we're not giving them a crowbar. Fishing tackle, no. Tankard, hammer, none of those. Healer's kit, no, not really. I don't think so. Holy water, hunting trap, hourglass, ink pen, jug, ladder, lamp, no. Lanterns, lock, magnifying glass, no, we can't do that. Manacles, mess kit, none of those. The mirror, no, I don't think so. Oil, paper, parchment, perfume. A pick, pitons, poison, basic, no. Pole, pot, potion of healing, too much. Pouch, I'm not against the idea of the pouch. Let's give them a pouch. Why not? It's not that much. They need something to put everything in. Let's give them the pouch. It is only 5 silver pieces. It's not a big deal. And it's probably appropriate they have something to put everything in. Their pouch is basically their wallet. Quiver, ram, no. Rations, robes, no. Rope, no. Sack, scales, no. Sealing wax, don't think so. No shovel, no signal whistle. The signet ring, yes, I think that does. Spell book, spikes, soap, spyglass, tinderbox, torch, water. No, I think, okay, so I think we've got what we need. So let's make sure I have included all those items in there. Signet ring. I'm going to put in pouch. pouch, signet ring. There we go. And then we need to just make sure we've got, we need to add in the other couple of items that I had included as well. Fine clothes, signet ring, we've got all those. Fine clothes, ball bearings. Bag of ball bearings, bag of caltrops. Okay, I think we've got the gist of it. Anything else? No, that's everything. Okay, so I just got to add this up. So cards, dice, pouch, that's one gold piece basically. So we go 1, 2, 3, 18, 18, 22, 23, 24. So we've spent 24 gold and we'll have 26 gold pieces left. So they've got a bit of money. They need money to bet. Like that's one of the thing is a gambler should have some money on them. So 26 gold is good. So we haven't actually spent that much. We've given them, I think, what are the key tools for a gambler. So that's good. Cool. So that's how I would go about building the gambler. Let's go over to the chat, see what you guys have to say, and then we'll move on to the next background. Okay. Rough carved wooden dragon chest free. Better than having to buy. Well, I've included it, so it's there, okay? Common grade gaming sets, because a highly successful gambler will eventually buy better. Yep, they will. I've just going with the basic costs that are in the player's handbook, so that's what I've done with that, okay? So looks like there's nothing to really add. Nobody said anything other than that, just Fred. Okay, that's cool, no problems. So we're going to lock that down and say that is our gambler. I am pretty happy with that as an option. I am pretty sure that my players will agree with this way of building your gambler. So you get to pick, you create your background characteristics, but you get to pick 2 skills that you're proficient with. That could be deception, intimidation, performance, persuasion, sleight of hand. So there's a way of sort of giving your gambler a bit of nuance. There's a little bit of variation. All these skills are potentially things you might use. You might not always have a gambler that relies on intimidation. They might be more about deception, sleight of hand. They might be more about putting on a show, so it's more performance than sleight of hand. Or maybe it's something else, like whatever you think would be more suitable. Tool proficiencies, we're giving them all of the game sets, just so that we make life easy for the game master and the players. It's not just about making life easy for the players. Game master is important as well. And the gambler feature is nice and broad. So we should be able to engage this background in the game when it crops up. Good, I'm happy with that. So let's move on and do the next one. And I think the next one is it the soldier or the scribe? I think it is either the soldier or the scribe. I can't remember. Here we go, scribe. So here is the scribe. I want to explain a little bit about the scribe. The scribe is a redundant background. And let me explain why. You might remember that we built a sage. We did the sage background, and I actually renamed it scholar. And you'll notice if we have a look at the sage and the scholar that we built, right, is really the scholar and the sage is the same thing. They really are. They're essentially, ultimately, they are the same thing. And then the scribe is still a learned person. They might be doing a lot of writing, but mechanically, how much different is the scribe from the sage and the scholar? It really isn't. So if we look at the background characteristics, that would be the same, right? Because I'm going to take away this. I'm going to get rid of the skilled feat because we've got other stuff going on. And then what's left? Investigation, perception. Why is investigation involved? Well, let's have a look at how the sage or scholar is built. Well, you get to select 2 of the following: arcana, history, investigation, medicine, nature, and religion. Okay, now I've already said that perception should not be a skill that you include as part of your backgrounds. You can pick that up as your class, when you pick up skills as part of your class, but I would not ever connect it to your background, so that your background is never about optimization choices. Your background gets to just be your background. That's the thing that you were before you became the super person or the hero or the adventurer. Like, it's when you were a normal individual. So that's kind of redundant if you have a look at what we've already built. And then if we have a look at the tool proficiency, calligrapher's supplies for a scribe makes perfect sense. What does the scholar or the sage have? Calligrapher supplies. Okay, then the language section, languages are just going to be common and pick one other language. So that's going to be the same. And then scribe, they've got parchment, they've got calligrapher supplies, fine clothes, a lamp. And what have we got here? I think the equipment loadout here is probably better. Calligrapher supplies, specialist book, a robe, sealing wax, and some money. Would we miss any of that? So it really means that the scribe is unnecessary if we just rename the scribe and the sage and pull it into one thing called the scholar, this thing. Because I think the scholar does a far better job of imagining what that would look like, including the scholar feature, which is you have advantage on checks related to one skill proficiency gained from this background. That's it. And you might say, well, for the scribe to work, it's not the skill, it's the ability to use the calligrapher supplies. Well, let's just fix that. Let's just go in and say skill or tool proficiency you gain from this background. So it's either going to be calligrapher supplies or the skill proficiencies. Instead of rewriting it and making a completely new background, we can do it with one. And there's not a lot of repeat material going on. It's not a big deal. It's going to work fine. Okay, let's have a look at the soldier. Now the soldier is another interesting one. Again, we're not going to tie our ability score increases to the background. That is an optional thing, unconnected to background if you're going to use it, or species or class. The feat, savage attacker, we're going to remove that. That is, again, optional, not connected as a optimization thing for that. Let's now have a look at soldier. If you remember, we were working through what was essentially the guard. There's a guard background, right? And I removed the guard background because I tried to explain that it suffered the same problem as what is called the folk hero background from 2014, which now doesn't exist. Because essentially what the folk hero says is you were a hero before you were a hero, which doesn't make any sense. You need your characters to start off being something other than a hero before they are a hero. Before you became a soldier, you weren't a soldier. Before you became a fighter or a paladin, you weren't a soldier. It's a nonsense. It is unfortunately a kind of contrived way of trying to squeeze combat or class stuff out of a background. And narratively and logically, it actually makes no sense to include it. I actually think this, as a soldier, is a bad idea. It's full of weapons. It's got a gaming set. Why is a soldier got a tool proficiency, which is a gaming set? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Athletics, yeah. Intimidation, I suppose. But again, narratively, the concept is weird to make that a background. When you became a soldier, that is when you gain your classes. So let's have a look at defining a soldier. A person who serves in an army. If you were serving in an army, you're already starting to learn skills. So you've probably already got a level of fighter, at the very least, right? Or ranger, or something like that. One of the martial classes. So I think this is a nonsense to include, and we should just remove it. Let's just get rid of it. Let's ditch it. And instead, let's work on something that's far more useful to you. So for those of you who thought I was going to rebuild the scribe, it has become the scholar. And then the scholar has just become much more useful as a way of dealing with that. And the sage has been pulled into the scholar. The folk hero, the guard, and the soldier are all nonsense backgrounds. I would ditch them. Instead, let's work on some things that people might actually want to use and do. And the fisher is one that I would suggest is probably high on the list of things that people would like to include. You might have noticed I had spy and I had detective in there. That's for another day, people. We'll come back to them. So let's have a look at what the fisher might look like instead. I'm curious to see if anybody's upset by the fact that I just eliminated 2 backgrounds. Here we go. Soldier has 1 weapon engraved in honor of their brief enlistment and completion of basic training. No bonus, it's all for show. Again, like I said, even basic training, like that kind of suggests you've probably got at least 1 level in fighter. So you've already jumped the gun. So what happens, if you enlisted as a soldier, what were you doing before that? You will have had something you were doing before that. In medieval times, conscripts often had no training, handed them a sword and shoved them into the battlefield. Just a commoner. Yes, yeah, I suppose you could say that. But you would not be able to explain that to a modern player and then get that idea, Fred. I know what you're talking about because it's true, but you could not explain that to a modern player. Too many people would be so confused by that concept. So it is actually better to remove it completely. Instead, we are going to put this in instead. We're going to put in the fisher, which means I need to expand, change the fisher. There we go. Fisher background for Dungeons & Dragons 2000. How would you build that? Let's go there. All right. So now that we've done that and we've dealt with those 3 backgrounds, let's deal with a 4th background where we're actually going to have to build it up a little bit. We're going to have to do a bit of work. And we'll take the fisher. So I've already sort of done a little bit of homework on this, as I usually do. And we'll go up to the top of the page, like that. Yes, yes, yes. Gambler. Paste. Okay, I think we're ready to start working on the fisher as an option. Let's take it over to here. Here is our fisher. Now, what I mean is a fisherman, fisher person, fisher woman, somebody who fishes for fish. You know what I mean, okay? So let's build that as a concept for our background. And that'll have to be coming from Ghosts of Salt Marsh. So I have to switch out one book for another. Fortunately, I do have these books close by. So I have the Ghosts of Salt Marsh, so I can have a look at it and see what they've done there. And we need to put in here fisher. It's very warm here in New Zealand. We're going into summer, spring to summer, and it's the beginning of spring to summer has been incredibly hot and humid. So I don't know how long I will last at this. I might have to finish after this. Okay. I think we have our definition. It's nice and simple. And we all have to unhighlight that because we don't want it highlighted. an individual who catches fish or aquatic creatures for food or for sport. I think we've got that pretty much nailed down there. That's our definition of what a fisher is. Okay, so you might not be doing it as necessarily in your world. Maybe it's a sport thing, you know, and you know, you actually have games of catching sharks or something like that, or octopus, or krakens. I don't know, whatever the heck it might be. It's something squids, or maybe baby krakens, which is basically just a baby octopus, isn't it, or a squid. So maybe you've got a sport that involves that sort of thing, or maybe it's just for food, like that. The most common one would be for food, right? That's your living. Okay, so here we go. Background characteristics. It's just going to be a personality trait that you come up with, a flaw, set up a goal, have a relationship, and then let's have a look at what skills is already included in the fisher from the Ghosts of Salt Marsh, because that's where that background is. It is not included in the 2014 Player's Handbook, and it's not in the 2024 Player's Handbook, which I find a little concerning, because I would have thought they would have at least put it there. It's a little strange that it wouldn't be there, but apparently it's not. The fisher is only in Salt Marsh. It has not gone anywhere else, so we have to fix that. That's a background you definitely should have included, people. Wizards of the Coast, I don't know why you've left that one out. Anyway, so what if they put down as a fisher? A fisher, they've got here skill proficiency in history and survival. What the hell does history got to do with it? Survival? Maybe. But history? What a weird concept to include that one. I'm going to put down survival. But I'm not really convinced that that is the skills that you would have proficiency in if you were a fisher. Not really at all. Next, tool proficiency. Well, it doesn't list a tool proficiency apparently. No tool proficiency. I've put down here navigator's tools. Makes sense to me. I get it. Fishing does require navigation on the sea, so navigator tools make sense to me. But they've got nothing here in the background for the fisher. Languages, I've gone with you gain common and one language of your choice. The original just had one language of your choice. In the fisher trait, we've got you have advantage on aquatic animal handling skill checks. And I think that is probably the key thing, is your ability to handle aquatic creatures, whether that is to catch them and release them, or catch them and kill them and then have them as food. Like that is the concept of the fisher. So I think that's why I've put that in there. Next, gear and equipment. Well, fishing tackle makes sense. I've included that. I put in a knife. I put in a net. A favourite fishing lure. I don't know that we need to worry too much about that. I'll leave you guys to sort that out. An oiled leather wading boots. So I guess we could just put down boots and that would be fine. A set of traveller's clothes. Why traveller's clothes? I feel like if you're a fisher, you're probably wearing very common clothes because they get dirty and destroyed so quickly. So being a person who spent 14 years in a carpentry and furniture workshop and running the place, even though I was the guy who did all the teaching and I was basically the manager of it, I was always wearing, very, very either overalls or very common clothes easily torn up because they get covered in paint, torn, shredded. Fishing is a messy job. So I think travelers makes no sense. Common clothes, that's perfectly fine. Next, a belt pouch containing some gold. Like the pouch thing, yeah, I guess so. I've included a couple of other things here. I put down navigator's tools so that you can navigate on the sea. Now, you might say, well, not every single fisher is going to have this, but if you're a solo operation, you would. Let's assume that every solo fisher could potentially be solo on a boat. Whether that's a small one or a big one, it doesn't matter. Healer's kit, because there's always injuries when you're fishing. Crowbars are just really handy, even if you are fishing on the sea. Rope, super important. So I've included rope. Signal whistle, because if you can signal somebody, that's always helpful, particularly if you wind up going overboard. Tinderbox, creating fire is fairly important as well. And even a lantern or of some kind, a lantern would probably be very sensible as well, because often you have to fish in the off hours. It's not necessarily during the daylight hours. Often fishing needs to be done at night, because fish tend to operate at night, or just before dawn, or in the dusk hours. So you need a light source to see what's going on. Otherwise, you're going to get lost. So we might have to include that as well. Okay. So now that we know what the fisher is, which is pretty bloody awful, frankly, if you ask me, from that was not a good indication of what a fisher might be up to. Let's go through the different skills for the fisher and see what they have that we might want to include. Athletics, no, I don't see that as being something that's more important than nature or animal handling, considering what animal handling in nature does. Acrobatics, no. Sleight of hand, no. Stealth, no. Arcana, history, investigation. God knows why they got history. Investigation. Nature, yes. It's all about weather patterns and, knowing stuff about animals and, particularly aquatic animals. Religion, no. Animal handling should be at the top of your list, for sure. Insight, I'm ignoring that skill. Medicine, not really. You're a fisher. You're not a doctor. That's probably a background we could consider making, which is a doctor. We haven't even got doctor, have we? Survival, perception is the super skill, so we'll leave it alone. Survival is maybe one that you would consider, but survival, it's not. Fishermen aren't, or fisher people or fisher women aren't about survival. They're about catching fish, not just surviving on the sea. There's certainly an aspect to that, but I don't know that we need to worry about that quite so much. Deception, intimidation, performance, and persuasion. None of those seem like they work for me. I think this is probably the only one I would consider, and I don't think they're better than animal handling and nature. Animal handling and nature, just like the farmer, is probably the best option. The difference is the farmer would not have navigator's tools, right? That would be the only difference. So I think we've nailed down that aspect of it. Let's have a look at how we would build out our tool proficiencies. And for me, I can't think of anything that is more important for a fisher than navigator's tools, just based on what is in the kit. I think it's pretty much a given that should be the one they get. You don't give them a selection. This is the one they probably need to have. Just because if you're a fisher, you might fish with a group, you might fish on your own, but even if you fish with a group, you probably have the skills to do it on your own, which means you need to be able to navigate in some way. You need to be able to get around and not get lost. Languages, we don't need to adjust that. You have advantage on aquatic animal handling skill checks. I think that is probably the most important aspect. You have advantage on aquatic animal handling skill checks. I think that is broad enough to cover everything that the game master might ask you to try to do. Is there anything else that we might want to include? No, I think that's it. What I don't want to do is I don't want to wind up duplicating stuff from the sailor, because we built a sailor background, and I'm not entirely sure if I remember how the sailor is structured. What did we do with the sailor? You have advantage on ability or skill checks. Okay, we are navigating on seas or water. So what we don't want to do is talk about navigation for a fisher. That's not really the key thing that they're trying to do. The key thing is the catching the animal, the aquatic creature. So we don't want to step on the toes of that. So the fisher needs to stay the way it is. Okay, cool. All right, next. Gear. Let's have a look at gear. I think I know of a single fishing person who's ever done any kind of fishing who doesn't have a knife. Usually a knife with that isn't too long or big, for cutting fish, with the head off or slicing and filleting, and then on the back it's usually got that sort of serrated edge for taking off scales and just cutting through bone. Fish bone is not quite as bad, so it's almost like it's kind of like a smaller version of the Rambo knife, I guess. You know what I'm talking about. Yep. Some sort of knife designed around that. So I think that's what we'll do, is we'll build it around that. We need to also consider what other stuff might they have. And I don't think there's anything in the adventurer's gear list that I think would be worth including. I think we've got all of the things that would make the most amount of sense. You might say, well, would they have silk rope or would they have hemp rope? I think that's going to come down to, they probably have silk rope, because just, the durability of silk rope over hemp rope, it's a lot more. It just comes down to, have we overtaxed our expenditure? Because we only have 50 gold pieces to put our gear together with. So let's have a look. So a knife. I figure a knife is basically the same price as a dagger. We're not going to give them the dagger, but a dagger is what, 1 gold piece, I think it is, something like that. A dagger is 1 GP. No, it's 2. So we'll go 2 GP. Okay. All right. Knife. Okay. Fishing tackle. Fishing tackle comes to 1. So fishing, tackle, tackle, okay, and that's 1 GP, okay. And then a net. I don't know that there is a net listed in the player's handbook that we can mark down. So I might need to just make up a price for something like that. So let's just say net 2 GP, because net's probably a bit more expensive. Navigator's tools, that's an expense. Navigator tools, how much would that be? That is going to come in, where is it? Navigator tools, they come to 25 GP. So that's the big expense, 25. Okay, all right. And then healer's kit, first aid kit basically, and I can't imagine there not being a healer's kit for a fisher, because there's so many injuries when fishing. So 5 GP. Okay, we're doing all right. GP. Okay. And then a crowbar, which sounds a bit strange, but I think crowbar is still a pretty important tool for a fisher. If you disagree with me, you let me know. So that's 2 GP. And then signal whistle, just because I know that, if you're going out on the water, you usually have a whistle around your neck so that you can signal if you fall overboard. So signal whistle comes out at 5 copper, so it's nothing. It's not even worth worrying about too much in terms of price. The tinder box, we probably need to, that's 5 silver, so tinder box should be 5 silver pieces. And then we need some sort of lamp. It can't be a lamp, because a lamp doesn't have a cover to it. A lantern of some kind. Probably there's the bullseye and there's the hooded lantern. I think the hooded lantern is probably the one. hooded lantern. And that is going to come out at 5 gold pieces. Okay. And then what else is there? We've got the tinderbox, got that. Common clothes. Common clothes. Comes in at what? Common clothes is 5 silver pieces. So it's not very much. 5 silver pieces. Okay. So don't worry about the price of the signal whistle. It's just 5 copper. It's nothing. And then we have 5 silver for the tinderbox, 5 silver for the common clothes, because you're going to go through them quite a bit. So that's really just 1 GP. So it's just 1 GP. 1 GP. All right, let's add this all up. Oh, and I need to add in the hooded lantern, don't I? For those of you who are wondering, why is the fisher got so much gear? It's just the nature of being a fisher, I think. Lantern. And let's just see what it all adds up to. Okay, so common closed at that, that's 1 GP. Hooded lantern, 1, 6, 7, 8. 8, 8, 8. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So 18 plus the 25 comes out at 30, 40, 43. So we've got 7 GP left. So this is why I haven't gone with the silk rope and gone with the hemp rope, just because of the sheer expense. We probably wouldn't be able to afford it. I'm tempted to think that with all the stuff, they will need a backpack to carry it all. So let's include that in there. Let's just backpack. Backpack, which is 2 gold pieces. So that'll take us down to, that's 45. And we need to put in backpack. Backpack. So we've got 5 gold pieces left. That seems like a sensible number. Okay. All right. And then you can always just buy the kit yourself, but this is the kit I would suggest for a fisher. This seems about right. I think this is the gear that you would have if you were a fisher. Okay. And yeah, I think that's nailed it down pretty well. I think that will do exactly what you need the fisher to do as a background in your game. So now that I've done that, let's have a look at what people have said in the chat. Kind of curious if there's anybody left. Okay, fisherman has a small assortment of hooks. The fishing tackle is all part of the hooks, I think. Some line, 3 cork floats, knows a few good knots. I think the fishing tackle is really all part and parcel of that kit, as far as I remember. Because I can't imagine just having 1 hook. That would be kind of stupid. Certainly in my head it would make much more sense that you would have a range. So fishing tackle. Here we go. Fishing tackle includes a wooden rod, silken line, cork wooden bobbers, just what you do, steel hooks. It doesn't say 1 steel hook, but steel hooks, lead sinkers, velvet lures, and narrow netting. So actually it includes netting as well. So we don't have to worry about the net. The net can be removed. So let's remove the net. It is including a net. So I can take net off. That's part of the fishing tackle. Cool. That means we get to add another 2 gold back on. Comes there. Got it. That's going to work nicely. So that sort of solved a lot of that, and we've covered all the things that you've suggested. Knows how to pick a willow branch or other stick to make a pole. Look, I'm sure they do, but I'm not sure that we need to worry about that kind of nuance, even in 5e, even in 2024. Can use a common spear or staff as a fishing pole. Yeah, I mean, there's also that, I guess, I wouldn't put it past a fisher to use spear fishing, like, having a spear to fish with, but we're not going to buy the spear. We're going to leave that because, there's only so much you can carry around. If you decide that you're going to be a spear fisher, then you just buy a spear fisher with your starting gold, okay? There's a bit of gold there. There's enough money to do it. Advantage, improvising bait or finding worms. I think really the way that I've written that feature is broad enough to deal with most of the stuff. I'm certainly hoping so anyway. Okay. Kind of going to be a bit interesting. So let's have a look at this one more time just to see what we've got for our fisher. Again, I don't think survival is the right one. I think survival is the wrong one to include. I think it's nature, just because what nature's trying to do. Survival is something else in this game. And survival is more around surviving rather than using the weather to, figure out what's going on around you so that you can catch fish or aquatic animals as sport or as food. I think that is probably the best one. Let's just check it though. Survival. Here we go. So survival. Might ask you to do a wisdom check. Survival: to follow tracks, hunt wild game, guide your group through frozen wastelands, identify signs that owl bears are nearby, predict the weather. Okay, so there's predicting the weather involved, or avoiding quicksand and other natural hazards. So there's sort of a bit of survival going on there. But if we look at nature and what nature's trying to do, I think nature's bleeding more into what we're after for the fisher. So nature, intelligence check, measures your ability to recall lore about terrain. Now, I'm sure that that is including something like the ocean, the sea. Okay? Okay, so that's important. Plants, so sea plants, yes, absolutely. You'd have some sort of knowledge around that. Animals, sea animals. Animals, nature, yes. The weather and natural cycles. That's definitely weather again, and seasons and so forth. I feel like nature is doing the most of the work. I think the other one isn't. So we are taking that out, and we're leaving it like that. So what's different between the fisher and the farmer here is the tool proficiency, the fisher feet and the farmer feet are a little bit different, and the gear. But clearly something like animal handling and nature, very similar for the fisher and the farmer, and very narrow because of the way that background is probably supposed to work. But I think that's pretty good sort of compromise and getting kind of what we're after for that background. Do I have enough gumption to try another one? Do you guys want me to try to do another background while we're here? We've essentially made 2 backgrounds, deleted 2 backgrounds, and we could create a 3rd background if we wanted to. If you want me to do that, we could do that if you want. I think we should definitely include Doctor. I like the idea of including Doctor as a background because I can see that being. There's a few people I can think of who would probably go with, yeah, I would like to be a doctor. So I'm going to include that. Doctor. Now, you've got here anthropologist, archaeologist. These are all scholars. I'm going to remove these. I'm not going to come back to them. So we have a choice. We could do the detective background next, or we could do the spy background next. I would suggest to you that the detective would be more interesting. It's definitely harder to come up with stuff for the detective. I think that would definitely be a lot harder. Or we could do the spy. Or are there some backgrounds we'd like to add to the list that we would like to put in? Because we, like, the Wayfarer as a background here, I'll tell you now, the Wayfarer is basically the guide. If you look at how the guide works and the Wayfarer works, the Wayfarer it's really badly designed. It makes no bloody sense. I am inclined to remove the Wayfarer myself, because I don't think that it makes any sense the way that it's structured. I can see making a background that is athlete. I can see a background being doctor. Obviously, spy and detective kind of feel very similar in some respects, but they're not exactly. I think the spy is a bit broader, whereas the detective is a bit more narrow. But is there any other backgrounds that you would like me to include? I think that's what I'm going to do. Since my brain is getting tired now, it's hot, and I'm starting to break. What other backgrounds would you like me to create? Because what I will do is I'll take all of this. Once they're done, we're close. Like 1 more week, we should have 2 weeks, maybe 2 weeks. We should have all the backgrounds that we need, and I'll take them over to Wally, and I'll say, Wally, can we put together a document that can go up onto Drive-Thru RPG for people to download? Pay what you want. That's probably my intention. What backgrounds would you like me to include into my workflow? What backgrounds would you like me to include into my workflow? Okay. So, advantage worms, weather guessing, comic. Yes. Yeah. Weather guessing is one of those things for sure. Absolutely. Weather guessing. I definitely agree with that one. Stable boy. Oh, interesting. Is there something that we've already done that would be stable boy? Prisoner. Dirt pickles. Prisoner is an interesting one. That I can see. Stable boy. I'm trying to figure out how I would do that. Let's put them on the list. And I don't want to call them, stable boy, stable girl. Stable hand. That's what they call it. Stable hand. That's what they call it. Stable hand. Stable hand. Is it one word? I think it's one word, isn't it? Prisoner is a really good idea. I like that. Prisoner. Let's include. I've written it down as on my little list of things to come back to. It looks like it's going to be taking me about 3 weeks now. I'm just curious. Do we have something like that? Is prisoner and stable hand a thing? We've got investigator, but we're going to call it detective. I'm going to deal with that. I'm not doing knight, because the knight is basically you've made yourself a superhero, a hero, an adventurer already before before that you were like, I can say squire. Squire would be all right, but not knight as a background. Squire would be all right. Do people want squire though? Is it necessary to be squire? My problem with squire is I feel like that's stable boy. It would be very easy to turn a squire into another combat background that becomes a min-max power gamer optimization thing. And I don't want to do that to backgrounds. Marine, terrible idea. But yeah, is there a stable boy? There really doesn't seem like there is. Sage. Don't think there's a prisoner. I don't think there's a background that's prisoner. Those are two, I would say those are decent. I think they can be done without harming our game and breaking the narrative of a system like 5e. Too much. Oh, here we go. School, what's a school mom? Snake oil salesman. Well, salesperson, I can see. But I think we have merchant. Merchant for me is probably close enough to what that is. Let me just check that we did merchant. We've done a merchant, so we don't need salesperson. Bartender. Hell yes. That's a good idea. Bartender. I could see you being a bartender before you go off on your adventures. It's oh God, I can think of there's somebody in my group who would be right into being a bartender. Bartender. Okay, the list is getting bigger. Bartender, I'm adding. Deposed mayor. Galley rower. Oh, you mean a slave? Galley rower, you're referring to a slave, like in Roman times, the galley rower is the slave. Is there a place for... I think there's a lot of people, I don't think everybody's this way, but I think there's a lot of people who view even the mention of slavery as a terrible idea and an awful concept. But what if you do want to start off as, I was a slave? I can see that being a reasonably interesting concept for a background. Difficult to build, really, really hard to build. So let's see here. Let's put down slave, because I think that's what you're talking about, really. I'm pretty sure that my live stream is not set up to... Yes, I don't think slave exists in 5e, because that would just cause too much hatred towards Wizards of the Coast, and they're afraid of their player base, for good reason. So slave, yes, let's do that. That's your galley rower. That's nice and broad too. It's still really difficult to come up with an idea of how that would look. But I like the idea in some way. I don't know if I can do it though. I'll put it down though on the list. Now, deposed mayor. You're talking about a politician, aren't you? Really, you're talking about a politician. Can we make a politician that isn't a repeat of what has already been done though? I kind of, in my head, I've got an idea of what a politician might be made up of. Politician's not really a scholar. They might be, but is it a background that we need to build a background for? That's another question. Like sometimes there are things you just don't need to build. I think politician and nobility, noble, I think that falls into the same sort of realm. You can lean into that one pretty heavily. I think the noble background is really the politician. It's doing most of what you need it to do, mechanically, even if it's not narratively. Several early D&D, AD&D modules were about breaking up slave rings. Yeah, that's because that's the whole idea. Like, you know, if you want to have slavery in your game, the idea is you want your players to be fighting slavery. I think that is a great way to go. Like, we want to discourage slavery in the world, whether that be older versions of slavery or modern versions of slavery. Since every place in the world has slavery, no matter what country it is, including New Zealand, it just looks different. It would be good to have it in a role-play game where people actually fight against it. So I like that idea. So I'm not against the idea of slave. I just don't know if I can build it successfully. I have to think about that a bit. So that's good. Okay, I think the school mom is a teacher of a very crude school that is close to a day care for kids. That's a scholar. That's a scholar. I think the scholar is doing that. And yeah, look, do you know the qualifications in New Zealand to run to be in a daycare with younger kids is the same length of time and the same expense as if you are in a primary school and it's not a daycare. Did you realize that? I don't know what it's like around the rest of the world. And the training period for a teacher also for outside of primary and into high school, secondary, is the same as well. Time frame, it's just you're dealing with a different age group. So I think Scholar fulfills that pretty successfully. I think we're going to end that there. So we've got some work to do. Do you think the soldier background for Dungeons & Dragons 2024 needs fixing? Undecided, 40%. I can totally understand if you had put that down. Just watching, 40%. Yes, 20%. Hello, Nacho Man. How are you doing, buddy? How's it going? Hopefully you're not having to work too much. I know you've got to deal with the new house and everything. So Dirt Pickles is a patron and a moderator, and Nacho Man is a patron. Thanks for jumping in, mate. I think we definitely want to lean into working on some of those backgrounds. I'll go over why I think the Wayfarer is a waste of our time on another live stream. We'll do the detective or investigator. We'll do a spy if I can. I'm pretty sure I can do it. I had athlete, we've added doctor, stable hand, prisoner, I like, slave, bartender. The prisoner and the slave may be too similar, but I'm sure we can do one or the other. I hope. Bartender, I think is a brilliant idea. Like, it's such an obvious one. Bartender. It's a great idea. Fantastic. You just on lunch? I bet. I'm about to go to work. I've been wiring my house while listening. Fred Huber, do not electrocute yourself while wiring your house. That would be bad. I don't want you to do that. So, yeah, listen away by all means, but focus on what you're doing. I'm sure you've turned the power off everything. You can't zap yourself, but yes. I'm sure you know what you're doing. But yeah, I'm going to finish up there. It is really hot. I'm about to pass out. Make a plumber background. A plumber background. I don't know that I can make a plumber background. Could you make a plumber background? Where would it fit? I think that's an artisan. I think the plumber background is the artisan, because the artisan is very, very broad. When we made the artisan, it's doing lots of different things. I think that is essentially the artisan. The artisan could be just called the trade person, basically. It's a worker in a skilled trade, and there are so many things you can pick. So I think that's already been done by the artisan. I don't think we need to worry about that one. Haven't run this wire to the breaker panel yet. Okay, good. Glad to hear it. Okay, so I'm going to be back next week. And we are going to probably work our way through doing the detective and the spy, and we'll do the Wayfarer. And if we have time, I'll pick up another one, and we'll try to do another one as well. Just depending on how well my brain is working. You never know about these things. But I'm definitely getting to a point where my brain is going to break down. I'm going to put all this stuff up onto Patreon during the weekend. When I get a chance to get to it, I'll transfer it over. That's in the paid tier for the backgrounds. And then once I got them all sorted out, we'll go and see Wally and get it to be put into a document, make it look all pretty, put it onto Drive-Thru-RPGs, pay what you want. And I've already talked to Wally about this. He seems all right with the idea, and because it's his time. There'll obviously be profit sharing involved between the two of us when we do this, because that's the only way to really sort of do this nowadays. There's no guarantee of making money off anything, frankly. So I'm going to shut up shop, and we'll be back next week, do more. So not finished, just stopping for today. So huge thank you to everybody who's been watching and listening. Thank you so much to everybody who took part in the poll. Big, huge thank you to Fred Huber, Dirt Pickles, and Nacho Man, who were both all patrons in the chat. Thank you to all my patrons on the paid tier. I really do appreciate your support, because without you, I probably couldn't keep going and doing this. It just isn't feasible. And yeah, wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, or the night, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.